And that's fine and great. It may distract me a little bit to let them into the meeting, but I'll just try to keep things rolling best I can. I want to thank you all for your interest and time in joining us today. And just know that if you would like to enter questions using the chat feature of Zoom, I will try to move pretty quickly today so that we leave plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. And probably the best way for you to get your questions to me, given the larger size of the group, is just to put them into the chat, and I'll answer those later on in the presentation. All right. Well, again, this presentation is a call to action. It's really an invitation to join an effort to create something wonderful that we think will improve the lives of children and support families and build a stronger community. And, you know, every good parent wants what's best for his or her children, and that's probably why you're on the call today. We want to raise our kids to be strong and independent and well prepared for the future. And everybody knows that it really matters the partner that you choose and the school that you select. We know that's important. And that's probably why you're here. I want to share a little quote with you to kind of get us started. And I love this. It says that many of us in later years wish that when we were younger, someone would have told us about certain things, often certain books that as we look back on them would have greatly helped in the project of our lives. In particular, would have helped us know the truth of things. And we think that's really important in Northwest Classical, this idea that the books we read really does matter. We ought to probably all be wondering, well, what are those books? And what are those truths that we can learn in childhood that can have a very positive impact on the project of our lives? Something to consider as you hear more about our school today. And I like this quote too. Another one, see if I can get myself out of the way a little bit. It says that the books you read and the people with whom you read them will determine the direction and the quality of your life. That is a very, very bold statement. You know, education has been called the civil rights issue of our time, and we know it's critically important. And today I just want to encourage you to think about what education is, and I want you to consider whether or not Northwest Classical Academy is the kind of education you want for your children. And I'm going to invite you to join us, and to invite your friends. The word education comes from the Latin, and it means to lead forth. The value-laden term. Education is essentially what we teach and model for our children. And so the question before us, what are we going to tell them? I want to introduce myself here briefly. My name is Matthew Kirby. That's my wife and my 3 kids, all of whom attend Atlanta Classical Academy. I'm the founder of Atlanta Classical Academy, which is a K-12 classical charter school that currently serves almost 700 students who live in the Atlanta Public Schools district. My background is in business, and I've owned restaurants in the Cobb and Cherokee counties for the last 17 years, in addition to being involved with the school endeavor. And that means I've come to know many young people who are getting their careers started, and I certainly know how important it is to do that well. So in 2012, I led an effort to get the political approvals for Atlanta Classical, which is a classical charter school that's located in Buckhead, as I said, and it serves students across the Atlanta Public Schools district. And I had a hand in attracting hundreds of families just like yourself. And we did it exactly like we're doing it today, although we didn't have to be on a Zoom call then, but we basically just, in relatively small groups, told the story of the school and invited people to join us. Well, in 2019, I left the board of Atlanta Classical Academy and actually took a role at the school, and that's where I am now, where I'm the executive director of Atlanta Classical, and I'll also be the director at Northwest Classical as well, though we are in the process of hiring our school-based leadership team there and having a good deal of success. Okay, so I want to talk you through a little presentation. As I said a few minutes ago, I certainly invite you to go camera on if you want to. No pressure there. It's okay if you don't want to do that. And I also invite you to write questions into the chat. So as things come up, if you'll write questions into the chat, I'll be able to answer those later on in the presentation. All right, I want to show you a couple of images. Here's a group of photographs from some of our students at Atlanta Classical. And as you look at these, I want you to imagine your own children. And if they're young, you'll blink your eyes and you won't believe it. They'll be at this age. So, I want you to think about the end. Start with the end in mind. I mean, what is it that you really hope for your children? What kind of things do you want them to know, and what sort of young men and women do you want them to be?
I don't recognize him.
Let me tell you a little bit about the. Hang on just a second.
How would I recognize?
I want to tell you just some of the goals that we have for our students as you're giving thought to our kind of school. But we're looking to form free thinkers who are capable of self-government, civic engagement, and that have the future professional development, or prepared for any kind of future professional development. We want them to be knowledgeable of the natural order that occurs in science, mathematics, language, and art and politics. We want them to be grounded in the greatest works of history and art and literature and science. We want them to be fully prepared to weather setbacks, that is, to be emotionally and even physically tough. We want them to be able to write and to speak effectively and persuasively and perhaps even beautifully. We're really hoping to form graduates who know the story of this country and where they fit into things in terms of the Western tradition. We want them to be relationally healthy and humble and coachable and eager to serve in their families and in their communities and in our country. And when you think about it, what we're really describing is young adults who are prepared to build responsible lives that are filled with happiness and meaning and purpose. We consider ourselves at Northwest Classical to be a mission-driven school, and I want to share with you what that mission is. I apologize that I'm blocking it a little bit, but I'll read it to you. Our mission is to develop students in mind and in character through a classical, content-rich curriculum that emphasizes three things: virtuous living, traditional learning, and civic responsibility. And here are the essentials of the school. Northwest Classical Academy will be an independently operated public charter school, and I'm going to say a few words about what that means in just a few minutes. It would be open to all Georgians, boys and girls, and we'll start with grades K through 6 in the 2021-2022 school year, and then we'll scale to become a full K-12 academy. We'll deliver a classical liberal arts curriculum, and it'll be a smaller public school option. We anticipate that when we reach our full enrollment, that we'll be somewhere between 900 and 950 students across the K-12 spectrum. And where will this new school be located? Well, we're going to be located at 3010 Cobb Parkway North, which is in Kennesaw on Highway 41, just a little bit south of Ackworth and the lake there, and just kind of north and west of Kennesaw. I'm going to share another image with you. What you're looking at now is basically a map of Cobb County. Now, Northwest Classical Academy will be open to all students and their families who reside in the state of Georgia. So we have an open and a statewide attendance zone, which is really great. But as a practical matter, the school is located in the northwest segment of Cobb County. You can see that by the purple dot there, and those blue rings are indications of 5-minute drive times. At least on a good day, those are 5-minute drive times. And so we think that most families will come to us from Cobb County and Cherokee and Bartow and Paulding counties. But as I said, we do have an open enrollment zone, and that means anyone in the state of Georgia can attend. And we're, in that regard, fully a public school. We do not select based on the basis of anything other than you do have to live in the state of Georgia. So it's a good thing. Okay, I want to tell you a little bit about our partners in this. The first and foremost is there on the upper left-hand corner, Atlanta Classical Academy. As I said, I'm the director of Atlanta Classical. We're basically scaling our organization. We've had a good bit of success here. We've had over 1,200 people on the wait list pretty consistently. We have found there to be a very strong demand for classical education, particularly in a smaller public school environment. And we really believe this is a great model that does a very good service for communities and for students and their families. And so we're passionate about expanding it and making that option available to others. And so Northwest Classical Academy is a replication effort of Atlanta Classical Academy. And that isn't to say that Atlanta Classical is the perfect school. We're certainly not. We're still learning and growing each and every day. But it does mean that as we start Northwest Classical Academy, that we have the opportunity to leverage the experience that we have taken in over the last 7 school years and really 9 years in planning and all. So, so we will consider one another to be sister schools, and many of the top, particularly sort of in the back office, many of the senior leaders will be managing and supporting both campuses. And so we will have a close, tight relationship with Atlanta Classical Academy. Also, we're partnered with Hillsdale College and specifically their Barney Charter School initiative. If you've been to our website, you've seen reference to that. Our website, by the way, is nwclassical.org, and there's some videos there that talk about the objectives and the purpose and the organization of the Hillsdale College's Barney Charter School initiative. They're basically our intellectual partner, and they help us support teachers in training and help support with curricular matters and the like. We have also a couple of nonprofits that we will continue our partnership with, Kiddos and La Amistad. Kiddos provides after-school programming for students that may have working parents or that for whatever reason need for their students to stay after school for a few hours until the evening. Kiddos has been a marvelous partner to help us do that. Really wonderful people. And also La Amistad is a nonprofit organization that will be expanding with us that provides special supports, in particular to students and families in the Latino community. And we're also continuing to build these relationships and build these partnerships. And so we're eager to do that. If you happen to be a business owner or you happen to be involved with the church or a nonprofit in the area, we're very much interested in becoming part of the fabric of that particular community and in the Kennesaw area and just generally in the Northwest metro area. But the main point here is that we're not doing this alone, and we're building a team, because that's really what it takes to raise children well in the world today. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a charter school, and so this is pretty straightforward. But I will tell you that many years ago, when I first got passionate about education, I don't know if I could have given a really concise definition of what a charter school is, but effectively, a charter school is an independently operated public school. In our case, we've been authorized through the State Charter Schools Commission, which is a government body that has been given the responsibility of authorizing and funding charter schools across the state of Georgia. And so Northwest Classical has its own board of directors. It's locally governed in that way through the State Charter Schools Commission. And we are in that regard, but we're also fully a public school. So it's independently operated using public dollars. And one of the primary benefit of charter schools is that they're given freedom from many of the rules, a good bit of autonomy, but they're also held to a higher standard of accountability. And that means that we have to perform well. It means that our students have to deliver, academically speaking. We have to help them to do so. It also means that we have to meet a certain legal and operational and financial requirements to ensure that we're a healthy organization. And we think this basic charter school premise is ultimately great for kids and great for families, because we are poised and have the proper motivations to serve extremely well. So that's really the other thing, is that we, in theory, ought to be incredibly responsive, right? We are not tasked with managing all of the public schools in any county or in the state. We have a pretty tight focus, and we'll be able to be responsive to the needs and wishes of our families, all within the context of that mission that I described for you earlier. Okay, I want to spend just a few minutes with you talking about what classical education is. There could be a lot of really great reasons to come to Northwest Classical Academy. It could be that it's tuition free. That's a good reason. It could be that it's a smaller school. It could be that it's located relatively nearby. Those are all good reasons to come. But we think really the best reason is that you're drawn to the classical curriculum, that this is the kind of education that you want for your children. And so I just want to spend a few minutes telling you what that is, so that you can give that consideration. Well, I keep using the word classical, and let's just think about a little bit about what we mean when we talk about the word classical. Or that someone has been classically trained. What comes to your mind when I say that? You might think of this dancer who most likely is a classically trained dancer. You might think of classical architecture. This is actually the Parthenon that is still hanging in there after 2,400 years, and you get the sense of its strength and power, and that at least at one point was very beautiful. In fact, it's still quite beautiful. You might think of classic books, classic literature, classic works of literature, things that have endured the test of time. But let's think a little bit about this musician. This violin player. Let's just presume that this gentleman is classically trained. And even if he's now performing his talent in a free form, expressing himself very, very beautifully, we can anticipate, we can guess that he's been trained in the fundamentals, most likely from an expert teacher, and that he's conquered timeless theories and techniques that were first developed and articulated by masters in his field who may have lived decades or even centuries before his birth. If this gentleman has been classically trained, he most likely has perspective, and his apparent joy on the stage is the result of hard work and commitment and training. Well, that's really the way it is with classical education as well. Just like this classically trained violinist aims to master his instrument, the art for which a student in a classical school is training is the art of living well, the art of living free. That's why we call it the liberal arts. Classical education is the liberal arts. Liberal comes from the word that means free, and the arts comes from a Greek word, techne, which is basically the word from which we get technology. It means craftsmanship, or something that you make. And so the purpose of a liberal education is to prepare American men and women to make a life of freedom. A classical school aims to train the affections of its pupils, to raise their eyes, that is, towards things that are good and true and beautiful. Give you this slide here. We want to give our students noble things to pursue and admirable things to reward and excellences to cherish. We will start our every day at Northwest Classical by saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the American flag, but then we'll also say the Northwest Classical Pledge, which is on your screen there. It says, "I will learn the true, I will do the good, and I will love the beautiful." And it's in this daily ceremony we're trying to orient our students to be captivated by those things. We're striving to bring our students into conversation with one another and with the greatest thinkers, and authors, and artists, and scientists, political actors, and philosophers, those who have really fashioned our heritage. Intellectually speaking, you might say that we're trying to help our students develop an appetite for fruit and vegetables and to be turned off by starch and sugar. So we deliver a knowledge-based curriculum. I'm going to say a few words about that. And as you might expect from a traditional approach here, we teach history and literature and composition, the arts, mathematics, sciences, and a foreign language. We run text or knowledge-centered classrooms, and we truly emphasize the importance of the acquisition of language. There turns out to be extraordinary benefits to this that are time-tested, but also supported by modern research in cognitive function, that is, in the way that our brains really work. It starts with an explicit phonics program, so our youngest students will use a program for the teaching of reading, and we make a big thing of it. It's based largely on the research of Dr. Samuel Orton and Anna Gillingham, often known as Orton and Gillingham. It's a very structured, systematic, multi-sensory approach to the teaching of reading, and our students will learn in the first few weeks of the 26 letters and the 42 sounds and the 71 sound symbol combinations that make up the English language. And it's in this program that our students learn to read and to spell and to write. But even as our youngest students are learning to read and spell and write, we bring rich content, great stories, and challenging vocabulary to their attention. Not only are these things fun and interesting, but they're really essential. Why? Because reading is essential to the acquisition of knowledge, and the essential skill in reading is the background knowledge that the reader brings to the page. And so we want to immerse our students in language and in stories of enduring excellence. We really do want our students to learn dates, names, places, stories, themes, kings and queens, world religions, geography, grammar rules, and to have a conceptual understanding of numbers and arithmetic. All of these things are the basis for what our students will study and discuss later. Our curriculum is based on the core knowledge sequence. This is not to be confused with the Common Core. This is a different thing. The core knowledge is developed by a gentleman named E.D. Hirsch Jr., and you can read all about it at coreknowledge.org. Also, I would commend to you a series of books. If you're presently raising school-age children, you might look into the books by E.D. Hirsch Jr. They're called What Your Kindergartner Should Know, and What Your First Grader Should Know, and What Your Third Grader Should Know, and so on. These will give you a pretty good idea of the rich content that we teach, particularly in the lower school. We do consider the lower school to include the grades kindergarten through 6th grade, by the way. So our 6th graders are held in a homeroom classroom one additional year, which is a little bit different than most of the public schools in the state of Georgia do things. But we have found much benefit to giving our 6th graders an extra year of accountability, and they still have plenty of opportunities to leave their classroom and to go do their specials of PE and language and art and music and the like. But just to give you a couple of examples, what we mean by content and time-tested stories and the like, our youngest students will read things like Aesop's Fables and, great biographies by folks like about Davy Crockett or Johnny Appleseed. They'll learn all the presidents and they'll learn to count and shapes and sizes and so forth. In music, they'll learn terms like rhythm and melody and harmony and the like. Music is very rich. They will listen to music. They will play music. They'll get a chance to write music. Again, sort of orienting them towards what's beautiful. In 4th grade, for example, they start to read some pretty good literature. They'll read Pollyanna and Robinson Crusoe and Treasure Island, the Legends of King Arthur, and a speech like "Give Me Liberty" or "Give Me Death" from Patrick Henry, or "Life Doesn't Frighten Me" by Maya Angelou. So it is a very deep, challenging curriculum, and our students love these things. They enjoy these things very much. Our math program is grounded in Singapore math, which really serves to emphasize conceptual understanding in addition to the procedural mechanics of math. And our kids will get a heavy dose of grammar. Reading groups are a big part of the elementary experience. So each day we set aside some time for our students to break into small groups. They will read amongst each other. They will read with their teachers. They will oftentimes read with parents who come in and help us in those daily reading groups. But as I've said, the acquisition of language and reading comprehension and vocabulary and so forth are just essential to everything we do in the future. As is memory work. We actually do have our kids memorize things. And they do recitations, which is an exercise in being courageous, and but also it exercises the ultimate supercomputer, which is really the human brain. So, okay, let me say just a few words about Latin. We, of course, as a good classical school, we will introduce our students to Latin and Greek root words, even in 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. In 6th grade, they start to take Latin more formally. Well, why do we do that? Well, to study Latin is an exercise in learning how language itself is constructed. To learn Latin has a multiplicative effect. Our students will learn grammar and vocabulary and logic and critical thinking. Anyone who's ever taken Latin would probably say, yeah, it's a real exercise in tenacity because it's hard. It's hard. But our students really enjoy it. In fact, we found in many cases when students get to high school and they have the opportunity to move into a modern foreign language, they actually want to stick with Latin. They feel like they've made a significant investment in learning it, and it's very useful in a lot of ways. How is it useful? Well, it turns out those who study Latin have it's well documented that they tend to score quite a bit better on SAT or ACTs, which can be important if you're interested in getting into the top most competitive colleges. But our Latin teachers would tell you, and I would agree, that the best reason to study Latin is so that you can actually engage with ancient texts and read ancient literature in its original form, which is a very beautiful thing and good unto itself. So Latin is an important part of what we do. I want to say just a few words. I will not go into depth about the high school curriculum. I'm going to make an assumption that many of you are perhaps most interested in next year, which would be our K-6 environment. But it is important. I mean, we want families to come to Northwest Classical with an eye towards the future. We are going to scale to become a K-12 school. And the curriculum continues in its depth, its richness, its challenge, and so we want you to know of that. History is critically important. One of the things we do very different in history is that we read primary source documents primarily. So we don't read a lot of narrative textbooks that will often reflect the bias of the author. Instead, we take our students right back to the original sources. And so they'll read ancient speeches, things like Pericles' funeral oration, or they'll read from Plutarch's Lives, which is a history book just several thousand years old. They'll read political documents like Magna Carta or the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence. They will read biographies of great men and women. And they'll read other important historical documents like a letter from the Birmingham jail written by Martin Luther King Jr. at the height of the Civil Rights Movement. But why do we do all this? Well, we want our kids to be engaged with challenging vocabulary and difficult sentence structure, and we want to filter the bias out of the textbooks, as I mentioned. What we're really trying to do is we're trying to put our students in conversation with the greatest thinkers and actors of human history, and that's really the essential idea. I want to say just certainly classical schools are well known for their emphasis in the humanities. We do have in addition to primary sources in kind of history and politics and philosophy and so forth, we do have a great books curriculum, and so our students will read many old classics. And why? Because these continue to teach us today. But I don't want you to think for a second that we would be minimizing the importance of math and sciences. I mean, it's just simply not the case. I mean, if classical education is anything, it's about getting our minds around the natural order that exists in the world. And so, you think about it. I mean, Aristotle was a scientist, and Greek civilization brought us Euclid and Euripides. Michelangelo, famous artist and painter, was a student of anatomy. Think about the things that you may have learned over the course of your schooling or maybe even your career. Things like Newton's law, Boyle's law, or Pythagorean theorem. These are not things or ideas that just fell out of the sky. These are named after great scientists who successfully describe the order that exists in the natural world. And so science and math bring us great examples of the classical tradition. Not only are we learning to do science, we're learning history and how men have identified and made sense of the natural world around them. Okay, other things, I guess the final point that I will make about high school curriculum is kind of where it's headed. Where it's headed is a final project, which we call our senior capstone project, which is an academic rite of passage in which our seniors will write a 15-page paper. They will present it, and they will defend it before a panel of faculty members. This is actually like the Super Bowl of the school in a lot of ways. We have this is a big deal at the end of each school year when our seniors embark on presenting and defending their senior thesis, and it is a beautiful thing to see. Our top students are challenged as much as they could be, and our students that are either in the middle of the road or are struggling, they also get through this with the support of their teachers, and it's really a beautiful, enriching opportunity. They take on a very challenging topic that has something to do with what does it mean to live well? What is a good life? And what do we derive from the curriculum and other outside sources to make a statement and to mount an argument and defend it before our peers? It's the culminating intellectual event of the school, and one that our students have come to value very much. Well, how will we know how we're doing in high school? How will we know if we're doing the right things? Well, if we see teachers and students having intellectual conversations about serious subjects, we'll know we're on the right track. We want to see students who are capable of taking a position and supporting it with evidence. We want to see young graduates who can write and speak effectively and persuasively and perhaps even beautifully. We want these graduates to be young Americans who are grounded in. That means they They know something about the greatest works of art and history and literature. And we want them to have been immersed in the greatest stories ever told. And there's one final point I'll make about the curriculum. I think I said earlier that we are an American classical school, and I just kind of want to say what that means. But American classical school, we're in the business of forming American citizens that do indeed have a common heritage, and we're trying to instill a common speech and language. We really are bequeathing our heritage to the next generation. That's what it means to educate. And I love this quote by E.D. Hurst Jr. He says that a nation is best unified by being taught in childhood the best things in its intellectual and moral heritage. And so our idea is that our students will know the story of our country. That is, that it's the full expression of a people who, though they were certainly imperfect then, as we are imperfect now, they fled tyranny in search of civil and religious freedom, and they established a nation and the longest-standing constitution in the history of mankind, based on the truth that all men and women are equal. And what's really wonderful about this model is that we do it in a public school environment. And what that means is that everything I've just described is supported by a student services department that helps those students that may have disabilities, they may be English language learners, or they may require other kind of additional supports. And so we will have a pretty robust department of people that are able to support students with those particular needs. All right, by way of just a little bit of summary, these are the academic pillars of Northwest Classical Academy. We deliver a teacher-led, knowledge-centered classroom. We focus on literacy and language. We use primary sources primarily as opposed to narrative textbooks. Our students read great books and biographies, trying to sort out the big question of what does a well-lived life look like. They engage in Socratic discussion, which is essentially a conversation, and we do emphasize direct character education. We do all of these things in a disciplined, peaceful environment. Okay, I do want to tell you that we have excited that we have hired some teachers, and I want to introduce you to some of our teachers. Okay, if you're looking at your screen, you can see some of our teachers. And I can't see any of you by video, which is perfectly fine, but I'm hoping that I at least got a little bit of a chuckle or maybe a smile out of you with this slide. Of course, I'm joking. These aren't actual people we've hired, but I am trying to make a really important point. Is that this is sort of how we view education, right? We are doing our very best to bring our students, even our young students, into conversation with some of the greatest thinkers and actors who've ever lived. So this is an important point. We often say, well, of course, we are also going to hire flesh and bone living teachers. And so kind of what are we looking for there? Well, we're looking for kind-hearted subject matter experts. By kind-hearted, we just mean we want to hire people who have demonstrated that they truly want to commit their lives to being in a classroom teaching every day, that they actually love children, right? That's a pretty important feature for a teacher. The other thing is that they're subject matter experts. And what do we mean by that? Well, we really do believe that students learn more from teachers who know more. And so particularly in the high school, we want teachers, we will hire teachers who have legitimate credentials and training and education in the subjects that they're going to teach. And so this is of the utmost importance to our school model. In the lower school, we want students, we want teachers who are have excellent command of the English language. We want them to be lovers of books, lovers of stories. It would be wonderful if they are linguists, and we want them to be prepared to lead in a teacher-centered, knowledge-centered classroom. Again, the culture of the school is that we do our best to hire intellectuals, bookish people who love their subject matters and have the audacious idea that in the teaching of their subject, they can actually positively transform a person's life. That's really what we're looking for. And we will increasingly, by the way, be posting job opportunities. We're kind of doing a national search for teachers. We will hire many from the area, and we'll hire some that will come to us from out of state, which is wonderful as well. And our website will have a lot more detail as to which teachers and specific job requirements, and then how you, if you happen to be interested in teaching with us, could go about applying for those jobs. And so more about that to follow very, very early in the new year, although some of it's already starting to appear on our website. Okay, so that's a little bit about teachers. Let me say a little bit about students and culture. I think that we can summarize our expectation for students in a couple of words. I'm blocking it down there, but it says that our expectation for students is that they're polite and attentive. That's about it. We have a little bit of a longer rule book. Unfortunately, those things have to be put in print, but everything that we do really comes down to that idea, polite and attentive. If we're those two things, then, everybody is, we've really have created a wonderful learning environment where all students can thrive. Our hall rooms and classrooms will be quiet. They will be peaceful. They will be orderly. Our students do wear uniforms that vary a little bit by the grade that they're in. But uniforms we do primarily to eliminate distractions and to sort of level the playing field a little bit. Okay, we make a big deal about our school virtues. Not only do we hire teachers who see it as their job to teach and model the virtues that we intend to cultivate in our students, but we put a lot of emphasis on the cultivation of virtue. And of course, during times where there might be a disciplinary matter of some sort, but all the time we are, through literature, through history, through the humanities, we study virtually every case. These virtues are not just a poster on the wall, but we use these words a lot to try to instill these foundational character into the lives of our students. I wanted to show you this slide because we've got two of our athletes. Both these students are gone and have graduated and are in good colleges now. But it's kind of fun. You can see this serious look on their face, right? And so we do take things seriously, particularly all this about virtue. But I want to show you this next photograph too, because we also have a lot of this, which is silliness and happiness and laughter. And I just kind of wanted to make the point that, a school that emphasizes virtue, a school that emphasizes self-government, self-control, is a place where we're free to be happy. And there indeed are a lot of smiles and the friendships that form in a challenging academic environment are rich. And so anyway, I just wanted you to see the fun and the laughter on these guys' face, because this is a big part of our culture. Okay, I think that takes me to our Latin motto, which is a little bit of a summary of kind of what classical education is all about. These are three Latin words: virtus, scientia, felicitas, and it's intended to signify that there is a progression. This is the classical idea of the purpose of education. Felicitas is the purpose in many ways, and felicitas means happiness or human flourishing. And what is the classical idea about how we become our best and how we build happy lives? What has everything to do with the things that we know, that's scientia, and as well as our character or our virtue, which is virtus. And so this is the classical idea of education. This is a little bit different from the modern idea, which is that education is purely utilitarian, that the purpose of education is just to get into college and get a job. Well, of course, we want our students to do those things, but we sort of aim a little bit higher. We aim towards human happiness and flourishing. Okay, let me say I'm almost wrapping up my presentation, and then I will start to take your questions. So if you have any questions, you should certainly feel encouraged to write them into the chat. And I'll answer them in just a few minutes. On this slide, I'm intending to highlight parents. This is my friend Joe, who was on our board for a number of years, and he had actually triplets in our lead graduating class at Atlanta Classical Academy. But I want to make the point, one of our very strong values is the idea of community and partnership, and in particular with parents. And so we cannot survive without engaged parents who get involved, and we invite parents to do that. We encourage. We sometimes have some rules around access to the school, but generally speaking, if a parent wants to make arrangements with a teacher to come in and observe a classroom, we strongly encourage it. We will put a seat at the back of the room almost any time, and we want to see parents in the school and in the classroom so that you see what's happening in the school, and so that there's no space between what the child may be reporting and what's actually happening in school, not that that would ever happen. But the other thing is we do very much want our parents and ask our parents to volunteer, to get involved. They may serve on a host team. They might be on a hospitality team. They might work in the uniform store. They could support athletic or fine arts events. They could come in and do reading groups. They could help with the carpool line or work in the cafeteria. The possibilities are endless. And the main point is that we do want a great deal of parental involvement. We will establish a parent-teacher community association. We call that the PTCA. And there will be all sorts of opportunities to join teams of other volunteers and other parents who are raising kids in this environment. So I think it's probably it's the thing that I'm probably most excited about in terms of the community of Kennesaw and of the surrounding areas, really the whole school community, because friendships will be formed and will be developed. And when you bring a people together in pursuit of our kind of mission, it's really a heartwarming thing to be part of. And I know that if you were to jump on board with us, that you would enjoy it as well. Okay, I'm just about finished here. This slide is intended to be a series of images to just make the point that we envision a robust student life, that we will have a growing sports program, and we will have a growing fine arts program. And these are major staples of the school. We absolutely encourage and want students to participate in these as much as possible. In fact, we have a lot of students who participate in both the arts and the sports programs. And these programs and the specific activities sort of emerge as the school grows. We basically, wherever we've got student interest and we've got a willing teacher or coach or program leader, then we generally can build a program. And so we will have athletics, and starting in the middle school and then moving on into high school, as well as a fine arts program. So happy to go into more detail with that if you'd like. Okay. Well, I think I'm kind of getting towards the end, and I will start to move towards your. Oh, I think I have a slide about enrollment. Hold on a second here. Let me see if I can do this. You probably, the reason you came, I hope, is that you're interested in enrolling your students with us. Our enrollment process will formally kick off in January. The thing that we would ask you to do right now is get on our email list. There is a pre-registration form on our website. That website is nwclassical.org. And we will let you know just as soon as the software comes to life. We will have an enrollment window that goes basically through the first 3 months of the year, and then towards the end of March, we will run a lottery if we need to, presuming that we have more interest than we have seats. But we'll start offering seats at that point. It is our goal actually to get students enrolled by mid to late April. This is important to our funding, and I cannot emphasize enough that that if you are interested in this school and would like to see it come to life to serve people in the Northwest area there, please tell your friends. Please invite them to one of our presentations. Please invite them to join our email list. We've got a Facebook group as well. But we really, really must reach virtually our full enrollment to be able to offer the breadth of programs that we want to offer. And so this is really, really critical. Okay. And that kind of takes us back to where we started, the same idea that I started with. I told you that the books you read and the people with whom you read them will determine the direction and the quality of your life. Big idea as you consider the educational choices for your students. We sure hope that you've heard something today that's of interest and that you'll join us in this endeavor. Okay. Well, thank you for your time. At this point, I'm going to kind of switch over to the questions, and I'm going to do my best to make my way through these questions a little bit. All right. How many children? The first question is, how many children do you expect to enroll for each grade? Okay, beautiful. Then this person's child is in kindergarten, so we anticipate having 72 students per grade is kind of the number we're aiming for, and so we hope to have 4 sections of 18 at the youngest levels, and probably 3 sections of 24 at the upper elementary levels, and that's our game plan too. So it's roughly 72 per grade, obviously much fewer in each classroom. Do we use Common Core math? Well, not precisely. No, our students will test to that. Obviously, we will have to. Our students are subject to the end to the state mandated testing milestones and so forth. But we have a math program that is a Singapore math based program, and it is a good blend between the procedural work and drill and practice and memorization and all those things, but also emphasizes conceptual understanding as well. That is really what Singapore math is known to do. Okay, other schools that may have similar values. Well, certainly Atlanta Classical would be the other. I'm probably not best positioned to answer that question at this moment. I guess I would say, first and foremost, just register with us. Let's do our best to get you in this time around. And certainly, if you want to reach out to me, I may have an opinion or two about other schools in the area, but we're super excited to be able to deliver, such a high quality curriculum, in a smaller school environment. This typically doesn't exist all that often in a public school environment, and is often hard to find even in a private school environment. So, but if that isn't a satisfying answer and you would like to reach out to me privately, my email address is, I'm on the other end of info@northwestclassical.org. And if you send that question in, we'd be happy to maybe set up a phone call with you. I don't want to skip over the importance of your question. Executive functioning, how specifically does your program support development? Well, I will tell you that has been a area of growth for us. That has been one of the great learnings of our first 7 years of Atlanta Classical. And so we have executive functioning training that is sort of worked into the curriculum at the lower levels, and it continues to be an area of growth where we've actually brought in consultants. We've had additional training with our teachers, and we've started to implement a very particular program throughout our elementary school. I have a 5th grader and a 7th grader at this point, and I can tell you personally that I know of the value of a strong executive function program, particularly in an environment that is as content rich as ours is. And so that is an important aspect of our training and of our approach. I've got a book around close to my desk. I was going to show you the one we're using, but I don't have it right now. But it is an important aspect of preparing students to take on the rigor that's ahead in the middle and the high school in particular. Will your teachers be required to have particular certifications? So we are encouraged to have certifications. The way the funding for the school works, it certainly helps us to have students who are certified in certain areas. In the realm of special education, we have almost no options. We really do have to be sure that teachers in the special education realm are appropriately credentialed. Oftentimes, we will forego the revenue. We don't prioritize it, I would say, except in the realm of special education. We prioritize other things. We prioritize experience. We prioritize knowledge. We prioritize excellence in teaching over a certificate. So hopefully that answers that. It's sort of in the realm of helpful but not required. And I'll just leave it at that. Any bus options if there are concentrations of students? Wow, good question. We are open to that. We don't presently have that plan in order. That is the kind of thing that could conceivably take shape over time. It is so I would say let's stand by for that. Once we get the enrollment, once we start to enroll students and we start to discover that kind of opportunity exists and that we may be able to do that economically, particularly, then we're open to that idea. We are not likely to have money in the from public sources that would fund that. So that's an unfortunate thing, but there may be other ways that we can get creative about that if the opportunity presents itself. I will tell you that we had interest around that at Atlanta Classical, which is in the middle of Buckhead, and once we priced it all out and made that available to people, many decided that it was not something they wanted to do. So anyway, but we're open to the idea, and we'll see kind of as the students get enrolled how that goes. Can you speak a little bit about the diversity of enrollment and in teachers at Atlanta Classical? Well, yeah. So I mean, we most certainly our intention is to enroll and hire folks that are representative of the community that we serve. And so, we're trying to make this first of all, on the enrollment front, we're trying to make the school known and as accessible to as many as we possibly can. We're doing that through outreach efforts online, through mailed to the home mail pieces, by reaching through business organizations, nonprofits, and churches, civic organizations, and the like. We are hopeful that we'll soon be doing presentations at perhaps at certain housing complexes or neighborhoods. And so actually we were in Ackworth this weekend at a public event that brought us in contact with all kind of folks. So we're doing our best to make to make families aware, to try to attract as a representative sample of the community. That's really who we are and who we want to be. As far as hiring, I would say kind of the same thing. Same thing goes. We've had fewer direct engagements with hiring fairs and stuff, but that actually starts more in earnest in January and February. So we do have some job fairs and things where we're attending, where we hope to be able to attract all sorts of people. I would say, our highest priority is those though that fit within our that are drawn to classical education, that are experts in their field of study, and that have demonstrated their ability to teach and to care for students. It's definitely the highest priority. Special education will be provided in-house for students with IEPs. Yes, and so we are. Yes, is the answer to that. We will have a student services department, and we will either implement or write IEPs depending on if they're the student already has one or not. And so yes, that is we are preparing to serve in the field of special education just as any public school would, and actually believe that in many cases our curriculum, by nature of its the explicit phonics program, by nature of its content orientation, by nature of being a smaller school, there's a lot of things where we think that Northwest Classical can be an advantageous place to be for a student that may have some kind of disabilities. So, okay, I have a question here about clubs and other extracurricular activities. Are interest-based? Yes, they are interest-based. I think that's the crux of the question, is that yes, we will we really do set clubs and things up based on the interest of students, or we'll have a teacher or something that'll say, hey, I'd like to start a chess club, and it's like, okay, well, great, let's do that. Let's see if we have interest, and then we'll do it. So that's kind of the key, is finding those different pieces, student interest, as well as you've got to have adult leadership to make these things go. In all cases, we require that we have an employee faculty or faculty representative who's also willing to kind of take a leadership role in these things, just to be sure that we've got proper coverage. Okay, the next question: what types of technology are the students exposed to, if any? Oh, I do love that question. So we're big fans of technology as a tool for teachers. We have been thrust into this technology world by nature of coronavirus and this virtual space that we've had to operate in Atlanta at Atlanta Classical. But we are, as a normal course of action, we do not give students tablets. We do not give students computers. We try our very best to minimize technology. Now, that isn't to say that that our teachers don't. We use our teachers use computers. Our teachers use screens and projectors in classrooms, and but we don't put computers into the hands of students. We do all that we can not to do that, I should say. Like I said, we're in a very unique environment in Atlanta Classical in that our authorizer has forced us to remain closed and in the virtual environment. That would not happen at Northwest Classical Academy because the State Charter Schools Commission has given its schools the freedom to actually be open and in class, so long as they have the proper health safety protocols in place, which we would. So I guess I would just say that we generally, the thing we're trying to develop is the human mind, and the human and the technology is there is plenty of time for that later. So we just do not emphasize that. And we do actually teach an AP course in information technology in the high school. So we're not prudish about this. We're not, we do, and we have very much had summer programs where our students go off to Georgia Tech or other places to do really outstanding work in the field of technology. We're not opposed to technology, but we definitely, we want students at the proper time and of their choosing to learn of those things. But we do not think that, equipping particularly younger students with tablets and computers is all that fruitful. It's just not that is not our methodology. Okay, there's a question about school hours, and that's a good question. I probably would say that we will open somewhere in the range of 8 a.m. and finish around 2:30. That's what we've done traditionally. I will say that that's sort of in that realm of decision we've not made yet, and we do hope to engage with many more parents that are actually coming to the school before we make some of those decisions, just because we want to be sure that we're aligning the decisions that we make, both in terms of the school day, but also the annual calendar. We want to be in line with what a majority of our parents are working through, because especially in the early years, we know that we'll have parents that are both in Northwest Classical, but also still in another public or another private school. And so we want to try to work with families to do that. We can't ever make everyone happy in those circumstances, but we do our best to do that. I'll also say, I don't know if I got a question about the annual calendar, but the first year annual calendar may not be exactly what we do in subsequent years. We need to start a little bit later in the first year, just because we're still tracking our enrollment. We're still hiring teachers. We're still setting up the school, and it helps us to have a couple of weeks in August to do that. So what you see in the first year annual calendar may not necessarily be what we do in every subsequent calendar year. Okay. Okay, there is a question about documentation for homeschool students. I can